It is the scariest thing you will ever do, but it's also the best thing you will ever do.
Hey, welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, founder and podcast producer at Max Podcasting. And you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 213 minus 12. I'm making up new equations here. Episode 251. And today's guest is Emily Harpel. Emily is the founder and CEO of Art of Sucre, the gourmet cotton candy company that is just as fun and delicious as it sounds. They create, of course, gourmet cotton candy with really, really cool, innovative flavors. And they even have some edible glitter bombs to add into the mix or add into your drinks as well. In this episode, we talk carving out and cotton candying out your niche in a really, really cool space. How to unleash your brand on social media, as Emily in Art of Sucre has absolutely blown up on TikTok. And some tips from psychology to apply to your marketing. Plus, lots and lots of love for Cleveland/Akron/Northeast Ohio, which, as always, could be the entire episode. It is Emily from Cle. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Emily Harpel, and I'm coining this, cotton candy and cool champagne glitter bomb queen from Cleveland. So they all sorts of records there. But Emily's super excited to dive into your cotton candy empire story and basically just talk about Cleveland/Akron the whole time as well. Thank you so much for joining. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I always get fired up talking to entrepreneurs, but when somebody has Cleveland ties, it gets me like jumped out of my socks. And then you have a pretty boring business as well. There's nothing really exciting about cotton candy or anything in the sweet space, so that's kind of a bummer. But besides that, no, really excited to dive into all the sweetness, which leads me to the biggest thing I've been wondering about is, have you always had an affection for confection? See what I did there?
That was really good, and I'm glad that you've pointed out that the most exciting thing about me is the fact that I am from Northeast Ohio, because it's true, and I think everybody
Exactly.
would agree with that.
That's usually where I lead with my backstory as well. So.
As you should. The really funny thing about your question is, if I'm being honest, the answer is no. My background and previous interests have really nothing to do with business, let alone cotton candy or the sweet space in general. So it's pretty ironic that this is where I have ended up.
So I am out of questions then. No, what? Yeah, I actually have way more questions now. So, there wasn't anything in your childhood that pointed to, did you like sweets at all? Was there something about cotton candy that jumped out at you?
No. And I know that's like a terrible answer, but I am just being brutally honest because I just don't want to lie to you about it.
That's a good thing. That's what we're here for.
It's a good place to start. I got the idea while planning my wedding. I was just graduating college, got married crazy young, and could not find an answer for wedding favors. This was 2016. And it was really all the rage of like the donut wall, if you remember, very much giving like an upgrade to sweets. And that's where the idea came from. It was not this like long lost childhood dream by any stretch.
Real quick, for those who don't remember, I mean, I have a donut wall myself. No, I actually have no idea. What is the donut wall?
So I feel like this was a really big trend, and even still is, but really in the events and wedding space, you would literally have a wall at your event that donuts would hang on. It was as simple as that. Or even like cake pops were really huge kind of coming up, or those sugar cookies that look more like art. It was this time period where Instagram was really blowing up. Pinterest was a really big thing. And these desserts were getting this like insane artisanal upgrade, for lack of a better description.
Oh, okay. So I'm tracking now with cake pops. Definitely always enjoy cake pops and remember that when that started getting really, really, really sexy. But somehow I just totally missed the boat on the donut wall. So I'm glad you've kind of take that and now taken it to another level with the cotton candy wall, if you will.
Yeah.
Starting a business or even thinking of starting a business, around the time of your honeymoon after your wedding, I think most people around that time are like just exhausted from the wedding and wedding planning and like really excited to just chill and not think about work or business at all. How did these dark and sweet thoughts start infiltrating your mind?
Yeah, and when I share even more, you're gonna think I'm probably even crazier.
No, no, no. You're from Cleveland, so you always have it passed. Like you could literally say what that's the biggest disclaimer ever. So
Right, that lets me get away with pretty much anything at this point. Yeah, so my background in psychology, that's what my degree is in, and the plan was full on to go to graduate school, and long story short, they filled the cohort before they even reached my application. So they basically put me on ice a little bit. They were like, "Hey, let's get through this cohort. We'll come back and review you for the next." So I had about 6 months to a year after I graduated with nothing to do but wedding planning, which sounds, amazing, except for the fact when you're not drawing a paycheck and how do you go get a job that you don't really have any experience for when you're going to be leaving in a year. So it was a whole kind of sticky situation. And no pun intended with that
yeah,
one.
I was almost gonna let that one fly, but thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just had to pause on that one. It got to the point where I really had to figure out I had to figure out something, right? I couldn't just sit for a year. That wasn't an option. And I could not find something that just felt like it was the right fit. And so when I had this idea, I really kind of ran with it and presented it to my husband on our honeymoon drive home because we were literally too young to rent a rental car. And this was before like Uber was a big thing. So we drove 20 hours to get to our honeymoon. And on the way back, I had Drew trapped and was like, this is my golden moment. And I asked him in the car, like, is this crazy? What do you think? And fully expected him to be like, girl, get a real job. Like, what are you doing? And he didn't. He said, this is an excellent idea. And it was an events-based business to begin with. So the whole thought was to spin unique flavors of cotton candy in person at events. And he was on board immediately. We came up with the name on that car ride home. I got the LLC on my phone on the car ride home, the Instagram handles, all of it, and then took the money from our wedding gifts and bought my first cotton candy machine like immediately following the wedding.
Which brings us perfectly to the art of Sucre. So let's get to your official business story there. I don't know why I said official. Your very unofficial business story. You actually read my mind because I was really curious about how your husband reacted to this idea you had. And you obviously great guy, like super supportive, awesome reaction there. What about friends and family when they heard, oh, wait, hold on. This is what Emily's doing now?
Oh, yeah, that was pretty much the reaction from everybody with the exception of my parents, which I guess is really great news because they had just paid for me to get this fancy college degree. And I turned around and was like, actually, mom and dad, grad school's not really happening. I'm going to start a cotton candy business. And they were immediately supportive. And I think it's because my parents are entrepreneurs. So it wasn't as much of a stretch. They could kind of see my vision and they were able to help along the way of just from like a paperwork process, which is a huge step up when you're 23 and, launching a business for the first time. And I also think it's important to note that Drew's 2 years younger than I am. So he was 21 when we got married. And I don't know if it was just because we were both young and stupid or what it was, but the fact that he was like fully on board for this, he gets all the credit in the world because that's just pure insanity.
Oh my God. I think it means the world when your significant other is supportive, even if you can't pronounce it. Also, parents, that's everything. I think back, I'm the same way. My parents are entrepreneurs. We got a family business that they started literally the year I was born. So like similar to you, grew up with parents having, a business or being entrepreneurs. And I experienced that same sort of thing. Like when I left the corporate world and joined the family business for a bit and then got more and more and like kind of differentiate myself into the podcasting space, they've been super supportive the long way. They've been super supportive. It is a long way. They've been super supportive the whole way. And it's kind of like semi stark contrast from like I think probably most people, like most of your friends, are kind of in stable jobs in the corporate world, and as time goes on, it's like they get promotions, they get paid more, things like that, and like for a lot of people, like going out on your own or starting a business is like so totally foreign to so many people that it's kind of like, wait, like podcast, like, so how do you get to do that? So it's experience some of the same things that you've experienced, but cotton candy is a hell of a place to have fun with, but also to start a business with. Out of all the different confectionery, I'm not sure the right way to say that, sweets out there, what is it about cotton candy that just kept jumping to the point that I can really differentiate in this space?
It was really the only thing that was being left behind in that movement that we were kind of talking about, right? This was on the age of when social media was really starting to come into a place you could make money off of. This was really in the height of people realizing like, oh, these aren't just like silly little pictures that people are posting. There's something here. And everything that had to do with cotton candy was something that was really childish. So it was about a fair or a baseball game, something like that. There was no adult element to it, number one.
You just gave me the image of like the little kids at a baseball game when they have the cotton candy bundle that's like as big as their entire body.
No, exactly, because that's what you think of, right? In line with that, the branding of cotton candy is actually like low key terrifying if you think about it. It's this like scary red clown on this like sketchy clear bag that has just like a twist tie on it that wasn't even like sealed properly, and it's half melted in the packaging when you get it, and it's probably going to give you a cavity, and there's no flavor associated. It's a color. Like that's weird if you think about it. Like pink or blue, there's no flavor associated with like traditional cotton candy. So I really felt like no one was touching this. There was nothing to elevate it, to give it this like much needed upgrade. And I had the vision for it. Why not me? Which is why I went with cotton candy.
So how much testing and taste testing has there been in your journey as you have started to really diversify the flavors that you offer?
Too much, too much, too much taste testing. It's even funny now, like when we roll out new recipes, a recipe doesn't really leave the facility until I taste it just to get the final approval of it. And sometimes when we do those, it's kind of like a groan around the office. We're like, no more cotton candy, please. We can't do anymore.
That's like the podcast Office Ladies. They were talking about how when you're watching a show and the actors are eating food, it might sound like, oh, that might be pretty fun to like eat as part of your job. But they're like, no. This is, there's like 30 takes of this scene and you have to eat or act like you're eating, a decent amount every time, and imagine how sick of it. So like this is your life. Like you you are living that. How many flavors total, like a running total, have you and the team created overall, whether existing or discontinued?
Hundreds. I mean, hundreds upon hundreds. When I did events, it was even in the hundreds because it's so customizable. I did everything by hand back then, and we do everything by hand now. So we own all of our own manufacturing. It's not like we have a co-packer that we call up and say, hey, you need to make us a sour caramel apple flavor for Halloween. It's us coming up with the concept and then executing it. So we can really do anything. And because of that, we do a ton of custom orders, whether that's with corporate clients, big brands, or, just your next door neighbor because they're getting married and they want a honey lavender cotton candy glitter bomb for their French 75 champagne toast. So it's really unlimited options. It's hard to keep track.
Do you have a favorite all-time, a personal favorite flavor?
I actually just mentioned it, and I think it's because it's on top of mind, and we just dropped it for fall. It's our caramel apple flavor that has sour apple pop rocks in it as well.
Ooh.
And it's very reminiscent, if you remember from like childhood, those caramel apple suckers, you know what I'm talking about, that come out like every fall.
That have like the apple flavor and the caramel over it. You mean those?
Yeah, like the caramel's like drizzled on top. I don't know, it makes me think of my childhood, but that flavor is the one that I will literally eat in my office alone. Like my team will come in and just catch me eating a bag of it. It's so good.
Oh, that rocks. Literally, it pop rocks. That brings back a whole amount of nostalgia from childhood. So there's the flavor exploration, and then you alluded to the fact that it you really have to go from concept to execution. So you're doing this over and over again. It's kind of like going back to The Office, ladies in The Office. It's kind of like running a TV show. It's like every episode is like a full, from start to finish, is like a full from concept to like putting it live. And for you, it's with the flavors. How long does that process typically take from like somebody has the aha moment, ooh, this could be a flavor, to a big launch of a new flavor?
It actually can happen pretty quickly depending on how out of the box the flavor is. So if it's something that like we've created something similar in the past or something that we don't have to do any shelf life testing on, it can be a pretty quick turnaround, as much as a day if we really, really needed it to be. But I would say on average, we do take a couple of months because we just take our time with it. We have a big meeting at the beginning of the year where we kind of map out general flavor ideas that we want to have for the rest of the year and concepts. And then we really space out the recipe testing so we have a little bit of time to just make it perfect. But if it's something that we have like this idea that no, we have to get to market immediately, we can do it in a day or two, or even if it has custom packaging, like 2 weeks max.
2 weeks, me, as I say. But the caramel apple flavor, or suckers or lollipops, depending on what type of the country you're from. I imagine you guys have consumed a lot of those for research over in recent months. That's pretty exciting. Another innovation you had, and this is what's gone like crazy cotton candy bananas viral on TikTok especially, are the glitter bombs. Where did the insight for this new, I guess, sweet product line, if you will, come from?
Yeah, so that actually happened while I was doing events. I was at a charity event. This was years and years and years ago. And a woman comes up to me while I was spinning champagne cotton candy with a glass of champagne in her hand. And she asked me what would happen if I was to drop this in my glass. And I said, nothing. It's going to dissolve pretty much immediately and just make, your champagne maybe like a little bit sweeter, but it's really not that much sugar. And she was like, sign me up. I want it. So I made her the tiniest cone of cotton candy, dropped it in her champagne, and she was obsessed. And mind you, this had no edible glitter in it at the time. It was just the cotton candy. And this woman had to be the ultimate salesperson because she literally walked around to everybody at this 500-person event and had them line up at the cart at one point throughout the night to spin these little champagne toppers of cotton candy for the champagne. And I was just in awe. She got everybody so excited about it. I literally went home that night and started researching, like, how can I make this better? How could I make this something that is really a wow factor? And started playing around with adding sprinkles and colors and edible glitter and all of these things. And then really finally settled on the edible glitter to make the glitter bomb. And I used to do these for events all the time. I would do them in person. And so when I pivoted to CPG, I already had the concept and how to execute it. I just needed the packaging portion.
You were so ahead of the curve. Do you watch The Bear by any chance?
I don't.
I won't give away much, but there's a part in the second season that involves a dish where they just like lovingly place cotton candy as a topper as part of the dish. And it's so cool. Like they use it like a cloud. So I think first of all, you should sue them. No, I'm just kidding. But like they clearly, I think maybe they found inspiration from your TikTok. Could be.
Maybe they've seen one of our videos for sure.
You alluded to packaging. What's your packaging? What's been kind of the highs and lows of your packaging journey for Art of Sucre?
Oh boy, this could be a whole episode in and of itself. COVID happened, so I had to find a way to pivot, and that was about a year-long process. I found an incredible design team. Their names are Molly and Jackie. They are still my designers today, and they really held my hand through that entire process. But developing packaging is not easy for anybody, but it's really challenging when cotton candy, it's a food product that's incredibly delicate. Cotton candy is very temperamental, as we like to say around the studio here. If it's raining, if it's humid, if there's any outside elements, even if we're inside the building, the machines like to act up a little bit and it melts pretty quickly. So that was a whole process of finding a way to get packaging that made the product last and have a shelf life, but then also do it at a low minimum, a low run, split across a lot of different SKUs, and to find providers that It doesn't take 6 months to get your packaging in, especially because we are like a limited edition, a limited release brand. And it's to this day still a nightmare. I'm waiting on a 60,000 unit order for some packaging right now that's been 3 weeks delayed. So it's a lot of tears, honestly, and a lot of headaches, but it is worth it in the end.
Cotton candy, tears, and headaches. That's going to be the name of your autobiography one day, or your classic rock album, one of the your emo album. What's been the biggest thing you've noticed besides the obvious differences in terms of, product creation and shipping, things like that? What's been the biggest difference you've noticed since pivoting from more in-person stuff to truly like e-commerce focus?
If I'm being honest, my quality of life has gone up. My stress levels are exponentially higher in a lot of ways. It's a lot more is at stake. It's a completely different operation. I went from myself being the only employee to having 20 employees that now rely on me for a paycheck and all those things, which is scary. However, I have my weekends and my nights back, which is just such a gift. Events were a beautiful thing. It's what got me started. And I do think at some point we will bring them back probably, but it won't be me doing them anymore because it really takes a toll on you physically, emotionally, mentally, your family, all of that. The packaging side of things has been a huge gift to me from that standpoint.
Yeah, I've always thought about that. Like, I've talked about it with my wife Dana because like we got really into especially her really into the wedding planning process during it, and we're like, oh, like that is like a pretty cool job to be a wedding planner. However, you're always working weekends and like you're busy all the time, and you have to be ready for people to hit you up all the time. And your standpoint, so this has been a really nice thing for you to get weekends and nights back. Back when you were doing events on the weekends and nights and didn't have as much free time or quality of life, what was your key way to kind of handle that and be like, all right, this is, let's just keep plugging along and, we have to keep working on these times?
Yeah, I don't know that I was handling it well, to be to be frank. It was really cool to get to interact with people on a regular basis, which was amazing, and to see people in person experience something that you've created from nothing is pretty magical. But from a sustainability standpoint, there was nothing. I was heading very quickly towards a really major burnout, and this is from a very privileged standpoint to be able to say this, and I recognize that. But when lockdown originally happened, it was almost like a sigh of relief, which is really sad because it was a forced 2 weeks to have to not feel like I was running myself into the ground. And again, I'm aware of how privileged that is to even begin to say that, but it's genuinely how I felt. And that's kind of what opened my eyes to being like, oh, okay, like I can't do this for the rest of my life. I have to figure something else out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid reaction, and it's like an interesting take on it. And clearly you were craving for, or I guess you knew in your mind that, all right, this can't continue like this forever. You mentioned that your team, built it out to 20 people now, which congrats on that. That's amazing. What tips do you have for anybody that wants to expand from, just like yourself and a couple of friends to like a whole cotton candy punching out team like that?
It is the scariest thing you will ever do, but it's also the best thing you will ever do. Emma is my right hand. She's our brand director here. She was my first full-time hire. And people ask me all the time, like, how did you know like you were ready? And you don't ever really feel ready. I can remember sitting on my couch, like doing the math. If Emma spins this many bags of cotton candy a week, it'll pay for her paycheck through this amount of time. And you kind of just have to take the jump, and it ends up working out. And the weight that it took off of me when she came on the team full time is something that I will genuinely never forget. And then once you do it once, it's so much easier just to keep adding and adding and adding to the point where you have this massive team behind you. Turn around one day and you're like, oh my gosh, how did this happen?
Yeah, I think there's so many things in the business world, especially entrepreneurship world, where you never feel ready. And it's just taking those baby steps or making that first action is like what starts to, I guess, get you a little bit more ready, but like it's like waiting before a big, presentation. Like the actual doing it isn't as painful as like the waiting beforehand or like the big aspect you make it up to be in your mind. Like once you start doing it, that's when you start to get some momentum doing. But it can be really hard to take that first step. And many steps ahead you are. That sentence sounded like Yoda. Many steps ahead you are on TikTok. So TikTok has been an absolute explosion for you, and viral posts, and just super, like, if you check out your TikTok feed page, it's, you can tell I'm like foreign to TikTok pretty much, but like there's so many beautiful videos that you've put together. Like it's really aesthetically appealing, and it's just like an awesome, engaging, like really cool behind the scenes, all that. What's been the difference for you in just kind of playing around on TikTok to now having literally like over 1 million people or millions of people paying attention to what you're sharing out there?
Yeah, TikTok is a whole different ball game. There is no doubt about that. I started posting in the middle of lockdown, and really kind of simultaneously when I decided to transition into a CPG space. And I think what has really helped is that I've tried to keep it really natural. It's not really I don't like sell anything on there. It's very much asking, for honest feedback. We bring people that follow us along for the ride. And I know that part of that is easier to do because of how I've structured the business from the standpoint of, again, we own all of our own manufacturing. We own all of the process of how we get things to market, so it can happen in a really quick turnaround, which is really rare. But if we post a video and someone's like, oh, like, I like the rainbow glitter bombs that you have, but what if you did like neon rainbow? I can walk into the studio, have my team whip up brighter versions of it, post a video, people love it, and have it to market in 3 weeks. And so that has really been a gift to our following. And I think that it's cool to bring people along with your story. People are interested in entrepreneurs. And if you can just kind of pull the veil back a little bit, you're going to get people excited about what you're doing. And that's pretty much what I've done.
Well, that's exactly the approach I take with the show. Like I'm one of those people. Like I love learning about the behind the scenes of entrepreneurs and how they went from idea to like really cool clients, millions of TikTok followers, things like that. But that neon one, I know what you're talking about with the neon one, because I've seen that when I was stalking your TikTok. It's super cool, and I think it's really cool, like next level of validation when you get suggestions. I cannot talk today, from your audience about content ideas, and even can flow to product ideas as well. So I'm glad that, I think a lot of us are glad that you started and kind of dove into that TikTok pool, because it's the pool's hopping, as the kids say.
Exactly. Yeah, it's transformed the business 110%. We would not be where we are today without TikTok. There's no doubt about that.
And there's no doubt I want to extend a huge thank you to Reginald Ferguson of the Fashion Geek podcast, who is not only a subscriber to the Podcasting to the Max newsletter, he also attended my session at Podcast Movement, and he reached out to the newsletter to say that he really took some of the tips to heart and is working on his podcast studio, making some changes for the better. So check out the Fashion Geek podcast. Shout out Reg. If you want to be like Reg and get awesome entrepreneurship tips, podcasting tips, and not so awesome puns and jokes to your inbox every Thursday, you can sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Now, let's get psyched. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to more you on the personal side. So inspiration, creativity, kind of how you lead as an entrepreneur and business owner. And you mentioned something before I find really interesting, is you studied psychology, and you were almost ready to get your master's in psych or go to grad school for psychology. How today does any insight that you learned studying psychology apply to how you operate your business?
I think psychology and marketing go hand in hand. People buy from people is the reality of it. And especially speaking of TikTok, they can pick up on the BS way more than any other social media platform, and they'll call you out for it. So I think that has just really helped from kind of a lens on how when I'm voicing over videos or we're writing copy for our marketing campaigns, things like that, of just trying to be as real with people as possible, not manipulate them in a way, and understand kind of getting inside of the consumer's head while they're purchasing. And I also believe that it's really helped building a team. Being able to navigate a startup situation is not for the faint of heart. It is not easy, and that is not a job for everybody. And I try to make that very clear to my team and when I'm hiring people, but just being able to have conversations and use that background while I'm growing a team has also been super helpful.
Do you have any tools or like mental tricks to kind of reset yourself or reground your team by saying, hey, like that keeps everybody going when times are tough?
Definitely. And actually, I just talked about her earlier, but Emma has it tattooed on her hand, which is a pretty high praise if I do say so myself. But one of the things that we talk about here is we have to take turns being in a bad headspace. So, especially for my leadership team, if I'm having a rough day or in a bad space about packaging delays or something that's happening, I have to go to one of my team members and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling about this. Can you pick up the extra slack for today, tomorrow, whatever that looks like as far as kind of morale goes? Because it's super easy to just go downhill very quickly. If one person at the top starts, it doesn't take long for the domino effect of everybody just to be in a really bad headspace, which we do not want. We want to avoid that. So, and they can come to me vice versa. Hey, I'm struggling today. Kind of help me pull out of this. And then the next is kind of that saying that Emma has on her hand is that everything happens as it should. And that comes down to when a package arrives late, when somebody's mad at us because it was a wrong color, something, I mean, it happens. We're humans. We make errors. Just having that in your mindset, as cliche as it is, everything happens as it should. And that has just been proven to us over and over and over again, even if we can't see it in that exact minute.
I was so close to getting that tattooed on me before this interview, but I was like, you know what? Emma's already got it. Like, I don't want to, stomp on any feet there. So she's kind of got the space there. But yeah, that's living proof. Living proof. I just created a term, proof. It's like proof and truth that your team is, buying into your mission, or your mantra. And you mentioned Headspace, which ties back. Well, I know it's a popular app, but ties back to getting into the mind of your consumer. How do you continually think, especially with your content, but also with the products that you create, think as if you were, the consumer and what's going to pop, what's going to sell best?
I think it's helpful that I am my target consumer. So it's women that are my age that are mainly purchasing our products. So that's very helpful. But I also try to really think with an eye while I'm scrolling. So when I'm scrolling on my personal TikTok page or Instagram, or I'm going to make a purchase, I'm really thinking through why, what sold me on this. And I try to take that back to our products and then the content that I am creating and really look through it of a lens of, would this sell me? Would I purchase this for whatever reason, for whatever event in my life? And that like just slight shift, which is common sense if you think about it, has really made the ultimate difference in what we post and how we curate all of our marketing.
Yeah, that's a really, really good kind of like last step of validation is how would I like this? And I think that's a great message for anybody who's creating a product or creating a content out there. It's like if you're not your own consumer, you need to know exceptionally well the consumer that you're marketing or selling to. But it's much easier when you can be a fan of everything yourself. Slight shift to an even more weird and unusual space called the unusual. So let's dive into pet peeves, quirks, weird talents, aspects of your personality that don't have to tie back to your business at all. So first question, what is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, loud chewing. I can't handle it. I will literally just it makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. Any type of just loud eating, get away from me. I can't handle it.
You're kind of working in your own hell then because you taste test so much stuff as a company that that must be really tough if somebody's chewing loudly. What about weird talents besides chewing softly. What is something that's like a party trick or just a talent you have that's really, really cool, would be on, Late Show with David Letterman, but has no impact to your business? It's just, you can do it.
The only thing that's coming to my mind is absolutely the opposite of a talent. So I don't even know why I'm going to say this. I guess it's giving me time to think, but I can only tie my shoes in the bunny ears way, which is like low-key embarrassing, not a talent at all. I don't know. I was in show choir as a kid. Does that count? I'm not sure.
I'll give it to you. I'll give you the bunny ears as well. Or I think our generation grew up with SpongeBob's loop-de-loop and pole. So a lot of famous ways there. I'm glad it's still flowing through. And then what about quirks? What's something a little quirky about your personality? Well, your personality that maybe your husband, team, somebody calls you out for, but it's just who you are. It's just a little quirky.
Ooh, that's a good one too. I talk to myself a lot, but it tends to actually end up more as like singing or just like random noises. And that is something that my team has very, very much had to get used to. Like, are you talking to me? I'm like, no, I'm actually just, don't mind me. I'm talking to myself. That's a hard adjustment when you come on board at Art of Sucre for sure.
We just had a guest recently, Leanna Gant from Tuk Take, who had a similar answer. She talks to herself around the house all the time, and she'll be like, "Oh, I need to get cereal at Trader Joe's," and her husband will be like, "Oh, do you want me to go to Trader Joe's to get cereal?" And she's like, "No, I wasn't talking to you."
Exactly.
So before we talk to ourselves anymore, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get wild. What is the most unique flavor of cotton candy that you've ever tasted?
We did a set a couple of years ago for April Fools that we called Bamboozle, and we did an onion flavor, and it was disgusting.
Oh, I'm glad you actually create that, because that's something I feel like a lot of brands make a joke for, like a disgusting flavor. Doesn't fit, but most of them don't actually create it. So kudos to you for doing that. And I can smell and taste it and cry tears of that just from you mentioning it.
Exactly.
Back to the donut wall. Do you have a favorite flavor of donut of all time?
Ooh, if I had to pick my favorite, very classic glaze with chocolate icing on top, just standard, no sprinkles, just chocolate and glaze.
Any sort of glaze is so good. I still love Krispy Kreme, their original. So good. Now that we've gone to our Cleveland tourism segment, what is the most underrated restaurant in Cleveland?
Oh, one of my favorites is the Marble Room, which is downtown. I feel like is really good. But in Lakewood, it would be Lux. I feel like not enough people talk about it. It's one of my absolute favorite spots to go. But in general, Cleveland's just underrated as a whole. I'm just going to say it. It's true. It's underrated as a whole.
It's true. Actually, that was an underrated answer. I'll hype you up. But I love Cleveland. Yeah, everything Cleveland. Marble Room I've never been to, but I know it's really, really nice and supposed to have really, really good food. How about most underrated dessert place in Cleveland?
Ooh, I feel like Mason's Creamery. There's a lot of ice cream based in Ohio in general, but Mason's does a really good job of doing like vegan options and they're really off the wall flavors. Totally underrated, really delicious.
Delicious. I like that answer better than the onion, but I appreciate it nonetheless. And then last thing, this all started after your honeymoon. First part of it is, where did you go on your honeymoon? And second is, what's your activity or like thing you saw or did on your honeymoon that you're like, I just want to go back to there. Like that was the dream.
We went to Marco Island, Florida, and we were really, really sick. Everybody got sick after our wedding. And so we were honestly pretty miserable the whole time. But we went to this like hole in the wall, super kitschy restaurant called Marco Polo that we still talk about to this day. There was a neon sign with like a mermaid with a dancing tail. The waiters all wore tuxes. It was just this very amazing juxtaposition of like high end, kind of kitschy, just really weird space with amazing food. Would 10 out of 10 recommend if it's still there. Marco
Polo. I bet there were no jokes about the name of it. But Emily, thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. We're blessed for the blast. But thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing the Art of Sucre story, all things cotton candy in Cleveland and beyond, and everything that starts with C. Really appreciate it. Where's the best place for people to learn more about Art of Sucre and to connect with you on social media or try it out themselves?
Yeah, we made this super easy on all of you. Everything is just Art of Sucre, websites.com, all the social handles, it's Sucre. And you can just find me at Emily Harpel everywhere as well.
Excellent, Emily. Last thing, final thought, stage is yours. It could be a quote, tagline. I won't let you use the one that is partnered on tattooed on your partner, Emma. But last thing, stage is yours. Just kind of words of wisdom to wrap us up on a sweet note here.
I'm going to steal this from Nike since I already said mine earlier. This is so tacky and so cliche, but the hardest part about being an entrepreneur is getting started. So literally just do it. I don't care what it is. Get the Instagram handle, get the business name, just start posting, whatever it is. That is the hardest step. And it's the easiest once you finally just do it.
I'm ready to run after that one and eat con candy while doing it. A little bit of multitasking there. Emily, thank you so much for all you do, for coming on the podcast, for all the love you show to the land, as it's known, as well as all the cool things with Art of Sucre. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite app and tell a friend about the podcast. And then try out Art of Sucre with them. And maybe even, feed each other, when people get married and feed each other cake. Do like that. You could do it any day. You can also find us on Good Pods, where there are good podcasts. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at maxpodcasting.com and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. That's at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Ending on a sweet note, until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!